Are you thinking about making a move to the Chicago suburbs? Well, today I'm going to go over all the reasons that the Chicago suburbs stink. That's right, I'm going to be talking about the reasons that people hate living in the Chicago suburbs. But you're probably thinking about moving there. And the last thing I'm going to talk about is why your strategy, if you're looking to buy a house, is probably a losing one. That's right. If you're thinking about making the Chicago suburbs your home, you probably have a losing strategy on how you're actually going to secure your dream home. So stick around with me because I'm going to talk to you about that and also talk to you about the things that people really don't like about the Chicago suburbs. All right, so if you're making a move to the Chicago suburbs, I'm telling you one thing that you are probably going to hate, although you might not, depending on what kind of stuff you like, is the old homes. I'm telling you, especially if you're moving from another part of the country, we do not have a very new housing stock. Most of our housing stock is like over 100 years old. So one, if you're looking for that subdivision vibe with the pools and the tennis courts and that, that is very rare. There are some pockets of places, or you're going very far away from the city, which might be fine for you, but that is something to keep in mind. Not as many mature trees, but what I love about this area, I love it, is the old homes. I love the charm. I love the woodwork, the craftsmanship. You're not gonna find that kind of stuff anymore. You're not gonna find homes that are built that way. Like I said, with the natural woodwork, the stained glass windows, they just don't build homes that way. They're charming, they're beautiful, but there's issues. And I'm gonna walk through some of those that you're gonna wanna pay attention to in old housing stocks. A lot of people are not comfortable with that. And one of the first things that I'm gonna talk about is the sewer line, right? These are 100-year-old sewer lines. Most people did not go and redig these up. And you know what they are? Clay tiles. That's right, you know those clay pots that you put in, generic clay pots that you put in, those like brown generic pots you put flowers in and stuff? That's what your sewer pipe is made of, like over 100 years ago. And they lay them down in 2-foot sections, and then they're joined together, and what happens over time is tree roots get in there, sometimes they settle, sometimes there's cracks in them that can cause some serious issues. So we have old sewer lines that can be a huge problem, and if you don't do a sewer inspection, which I'm gonna highly recommend, then you are going to potentially have some major issues, and you're not going to know until, poop water starts coming back up into your house. And that's when you're going to find out, and you don't want that to happen. And after you've bought the house, you can't go back and ask the seller to pay for it. So that's something that is an issue here that you can't see. For instance, you can see old windows. That's another thing. A lot of these homes, you have 100-year-old windows, single pane glass. Now, if there's a storm and a screen on the outside, I would not go jumping into replacing your windows. I'm not a window replacement guy. I actually think you're going to waste your money doing that. If it lives okay, that's something I counsel my clients on. Don't do major changes in a house until you've lived there for a little while. But old infrastructure, old plumbing, right? It's probably galvanized plumbing. It's not copper plumbing. So you know what happens? You get really low water pressure upstairs. So you're going to want to check that out in these old houses. Old electrical, old cloth wiring. Now here's the thing. Old plumbing that you have very low water pressure is a day-to-day issue. Old wiring, this is an old house. Lots of people lived here. It's still standing. You really need to go and replace all the electrical? I'm going to say no, most likely, unless you're really draining a lot of that electricity. You got a lot of stuff going on. But we have old electrical, a lot of old plumbing issues. Like I said, old windows. These are things that you need to be aware of. These are old homes. They need more maintenance, a lot of them. You buy a frame home, the painting, keeping the wood intact, that it doesn't rot. These are all things you have to pay attention to. So old housing stock is something that a lot of people don't like about moving to the Chicago suburbs. They're not comfortable with the old stuff. They want brand new, and what happens is then you're cherry picking one rehab here that's probably overpriced, or another new construction here. But it's just one here, one there. So I'm gonna talk about a little bit how this market is. You're already trying to sort of make it even harder. So old housing stock, you've got to get used to. Old layouts, that's another thing. Not just the infrastructure of it, but the layout is not conducive. Not a lot of open concept, not a lot of primary bathrooms. So that is old housing stock is something that a lot of people are very uncomfortable with in the Chicago suburbs. But that's what we have, and that's what I love selling. I love selling those old homes with the character. It's like a history book. So old homes, if you don't like them, well, you're gonna have to get used to them if you're moving to the Chicago suburbs, or maybe you live downtown in a condo, or find like a condo in some of these suburbs, which is not quite as easy to find. But anyways, old infrastructure, old housing, that's the biggest thing you're probably going to hate about moving to the Chicago suburbs. So if you're thinking about moving to the Chicago suburbs, the second thing that you are absolutely gonna hate about living there is the traffic. Even if you move into the city, you're gonna hate it too because the traffic around here is awful. And don't just take my word for it, right? Look at some of these articles. Chicago is consistently ranked as like the second worst traffic in the United States next to New York, and in like the top 5 of the world, the entire world. Think about that. There's an article here you can check out that was done by some company that studies traffic patterns and all that kind of stuff. And they said that they ranked the top 10 most congested expressways in the United States, and 5 of them, 5 were in Chicago. So if you're trying to get in on the Ike, which is 290, I-290, the Eisenhower, there are little pockets around Mannheim, around Oak Park, that area, it bottlenecks. Those are the types of things I want you to experience when you try to do that commute, because taking the train, being close to the train where you can take it and walk and actually utilize it is more expensive. Traffic outside of there is just brutal. You have 55 on the south. It's like a parking lot for semi trucks. 90-94 in the city, my gosh, it's like a parking lot going both ways all the time. So some of the times it's not just about the time of your commute, right? It is the agony of it, right? That's why I say do it, because it can be the agony of doing it. If you are the type of person that gets all flustered because you're going bumper to bumper traffic, right? It might take a little bit more time to take the train, get there, but you got your newspaper, you got your coffee, you're relaxing. So that is something you want to consider. But the traffic is no joke around here. And you want to make sure that, especially just Google mapping it, right, is not going to, I always say you want to do the commute at least twice. So you get it on a good day, you get it on a bad day, and I'll tell you a little story about what you might expect. Because what do we have here? We have snow, we have rain, but mostly snow and ice. And sometimes, I'll tell you a story. When I was working out in DuPage County, which is pretty far west, I was tired of the commute, and so finally I got a place close to where I work in the western suburbs, far western suburbs. All my coworkers who still lived in the city, we had a massive snowstorm the week that I moved. It took me about 5 minutes to get home. Them, what was a normal 45-minute to an hour commute took 3 hours. 3 hours to get home. That kind of stuff can happen. So listen, the driving commute is something that you really need to pay attention to, and it's probably something that you're gonna hate. And not just getting into the city, but all around I'm telling you, you're going on 290 at like 11 o'clock on a weekday or a weekend, and you're like, why is this so backed up? Why is there so much traffic? That kind of stuff happens all the time. And then there's these little micro traffic things. You're driving down LaGrange in rush hour traffic. LaGrange Road can be completely backed up. Elmhurst the same. York Road around the train in the downtown, it just backs up and backs up and backs up. So you have these little micro areas of traffic as well that you need to be aware of, especially if you're trying to build that into your day. So horrible traffic is one of the biggest things that you are gonna hate about living in the Chicago suburbs. So all right, as always, I like to say, I love selling houses. That's why I'm here, not just to tell you about the good and the bad about every place, but my motto is always, I would rather you buy no house than the wrong house. And so if you wanna work with a realtor and a team of realtors that is always looking out for the bad in every house, so that you understand that, so that you don't buy a house without knowing what the bad is, meaning potential resale, potential water issues, reach out, because I'm always going to be doing my best to get you to not buy a house. I joke, but that's what I do in every home. I look for the bad because you're not. You have rosy colored glasses. This can be a very frustrating process, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later, but my job is to cut through that noise and focus on why you reached out to me, what you're looking for in a home, whether it be the actual home or location, and try to make sure that you get that as much as you can. So anyways, if you want to reach out, work with the realtor team that does that, reach out to me. I'd love to help you find a house. And like I said, find the right house, no matter how long that takes. And maybe you don't buy a house, and that's fine with me too, if that's not what's best for you. All right, so the third thing, and for a lot of people, this might actually be number one that you are going to absolutely dislike. I don't want to use hate. Oh, actually, this is probably the one you would hate the most, but also one of the most confusing is our property taxes. Not only how high they are, we have one of the highest national averages, I think maybe the highest in the entire country, over 2% of your assessed value, which is like double the national average of about 1.1%. But it's not just that we have massively high taxes. I'm talking some houses, $20,000 is not uncommon in a lot of these communities for a tax bill. I just did a video about River Forest. If you want to check it out, $47,000 taxes on a specific property. So that the real tax burden is high. And that is something that you need to prepare yourself for. So when you're looking at these properties, right, you want to keep in mind, you always want to make sure you have the right taxes, which I can help you out with. Now, taxes is one of my passions. It sounds like a joke. I mean, it sounds a little sad actually, but I know how much it affects value. I know if you don't fight it and you don't appeal it and you don't know how to do that, you can have some serious issues with your tax bill jumping up, and you're going to want to stick around, because right now, if you were looking to buy at the end of 2025 or anytime in 2026, we in Cook County, we are doing a reassessment in a lot of the near west suburbs. Now, every year there's a reassessment. I could go on forever, and I'm going to go this way and that way because the taxes are so confusing. You're going to want to reach out, but I'm going to go back to the reassessment. Here's the thing. I want to talk about the reassessment, but I want also, even if it's not a reassessment, one of the things you have to worry about is, as I mentioned, the craziness of Cook County taxes. What it is we pay the taxes for the year before. So let's say you're buying a house right now in November of 2025. Cook County is way behind, like months behind in getting out the tax bills in the first place. So the next tax bill that's going to come out here in November of 2025, which usually comes out in July, by the way, is paying the second half of 2024, not even this year. So all of 2025, we have no idea what that tax bill is going to be. None whatsoever. So you're buying a house, you're going to get a credit from the seller, but what if the taxes go up? You have no idea. And here's the deal. Take a look at this property. This went under contract like this, all on market for almost $1 million. It's only assessed by the assessor at $560,000. So when you buy that house, you think your taxes might go up a little bit? Potentially double. Now they probably won't, but you need to be aware of the house that you're going to buy. What is its current assessed value? Let me give you an example too. I could go all over the place. I really like talking about this. I like making sure that you understand the differences between the communities and how crazy our taxes can be. For instance, in Berwyn, you have 2 tax rates. Yeah, within the same community, because one of them has a different park district than the other one. So it's just wild how our taxes can be just so difficult to understand. And so you're going to want to make sure that your property is not completely under assessed, and if it is, you understand the implications, right? Because a good realtor is going to tell you that. They're not just going to sugarcoat it. Secondly, with this reassessment that's going on, you want to be uber diligent about the property that you're buying, and when that reassessment notice comes out, we're going to want to take a look and see, is your property going up 40% in value? We need to account for that. So in terms of just the taxes, right? I mentioned 2% being sort of the average here. Well, most of the communities with good schools have even higher tax burdens. Oak Park is closer to 3%. LaGrange is like a little under 2.5%. So let me give you how that applies in the real world. If you're looking at a house in Oak Park and you're looking at a house in LaGrange and the assessed value is $700,000, that's not what you're paying for it. The assessed value, okay, and reach out, we can talk more about this. The assessed value is $700,000. In Oak Park, you're looking at about $22,000 in taxes, and in LaGrange about $17,000. So you have about a $5,000 difference if you have the same assessed value from one community to the other. And that's another thing. Each community, you're going to have different tax rates, and that changes every year. So it's really confusing. I pay a lot of attention to it. I do not want you to get into a situation where you buy a house and your taxes go crazy high. That may happen, but I do want you to be prepared for that. So the taxes, the overall tax burden, and then the way that they're structured is something that is extremely confusing. I help all my clients appeal every 3 years, and if you need to, every year, file for the bright homeowners exemptions. That's another thing. You might look at a house and go, wow, if you see a house and the taxes are super low compared to some of the other ones you've seen, there's probably a reason that we have exemptions. There's senior freezes, which I can look up to tell you what the actual number is. So I'm telling you, the taxes around here are wild. They're uncomfortable and they're very confusing, but reach out. I can help walk you through it. And then your attorney, because we use attorneys here, can also help you do that. So the taxes you are not going to like, but you are probably going to love living in this area. All right, so the fourth thing that is going to drive you wild and mad about the Chicago suburbs is one of the biggest reasons people move there, which is the schools, right? The Chicago public schools are very difficult to understand. Doesn't work on geographic boundaries the same, and generally speaking, aren't as highly rated or as well known as a lot of the suburban school districts. So a lot of people are moving to the suburbs because of the school districts. A lot of people that I work with from in the city, which are a ton of people moving out, that's a big reason. And that's probably where you might find yourself when you're moving here. If you're moving to the city, I can help you too. But the thing is, the school districts are great in the sense that you want to send your kid to highly rated schools with a lot of opportunities, but the boundaries and how they are structured can be maddening, and they are not specific. One community versus another can be radically different. And I want to give you some examples of that. And schools drive prices. So when you're here and you're looking at one community and then you're looking at another and you're like, wait a second, I'll give you an example, Oak Park. And then you look at Forest Park and you're like, that same house seems like it would be, why is it so much cheaper in Forest Park? Well, you want to look at the school ratings, right? And that's what drives. And so when you're seeing something, if it might seem good to be true, you want to look a little bit deeper. But specifically about schools, to give you some examples, Brookfield has 4 different grade school districts. 4. Elmhurst has 1 for the entire community that does grade school, junior high, and high school, right? What else happens here is that we have, high schools where 5 to 10 communities might go to that high school. Other places, only one community goes to that high school. So it can be very crazy. You have one block versus the next block, literally the middle of the block. So you're on this side of the street, and then you're on this side of the street, you go to different schools. I know people who move across the street because they want to go to a different school. So the boundaries are really something you have to pay attention to. And if you want to go to a specific school, you're really going to have to, one thing I recommend is there's a lot of these schools, some of them are antiquated, but they have websites where you can go on and you can put the property address in, and that will tell you what school you're going to go to, because it's all about your address, your specific address. And then another thing you can do is actually reach out to the school directly, which I recommend if you want to get a little bit more in depth rather than just going to a school rating online, is you can call the administrator. You can have a conversation, you can set up a meeting, but you can also verify that if you move to that address, what schools that you're going to go to. Like I've always said, I don't have kids. I don't know every single nuance of every single school district. I try my best, but the confusingness nature of where you buy your house and where your kids are going to go to school is something that you need to be attention to. And it can be a little maddening in the Chicago suburbs when you really want to get good schools. You got to pay attention. It's not just as simple as moving into this town and your kid's going to go to the same school as the neighbor. You got to do some diligence there. So reach out. I can help you with that. But I always say, if that's really, really important and integral, you want to do that diligence on your own and call the school, have a conversation with them. But our crazy boundaries, school boundaries, is something that you are going to need to get a handle on. All right, something that you might really hate. The 5th thing that you're not going to like about moving to the Chicago suburbs, and one of the things that my parents didn't want to have to deal with, is quiet. That's right, nothing going on. The boringness of it. Now, everyone has different phases in their life, what they like to do. What they like to do in your 20s might not be the same in your 30s and your 40s, but here's the deal. If you are looking for hustle and bustle, you like going out to late dinners, you like going out to, maybe getting a taco at 11, getting dessert at 12, 1 o'clock, that's not going to happen in the suburbs. It winds down 10 o'clock. There are some suburbs that have, places that are open a little bit later, but it's here and there. It's not the norm. I personally like to go dancing. It's not easy to do that in the suburbs. I got to go in the city to do that, where I can dance at 12, 2 in the morning, that kind of stuff. If that's what you like, you're not going to get that out there. You're talking, most of these suburbs are quieter at night. There's not a lot of late night activity, that kind of thing. And that's one thing I hear a lot about. People say it gets a little boring. But you are close to the city depending on where you move, which is awesome. That's one thing. And there are some communities. If you want sort of that middle ground there where you still are a little bit close to the city, you have vibrancy stuff going on a little bit later, more activities and stuff. That's why certain communities such as like Evanston, Oak Park consistently rank on people's high lists, because they don't want to completely abandon that city sort of vibe and that city feel and the ability to go out to a bunch of different restaurants, go out late. But you're not going to find that in the suburbs. And so that's something that can be frustrating for some people. And if that's you and you're moving into the suburbs, well, just keep in mind, you can get into the city. It's not going to take you too long. You take the metro, you can take some of the L's, or you can Uber in if you're going to have a couple cocktails or a couple drinks. But the quietness of it is something that I hear a lot of people talk about. The suburbs can be boring. But remember, I told you to stick around to the last thing, because if you are serious about buying a house here, you are going to hate what I'm about to talk about. And more importantly, you really have to wrap your head around how you're actually going to buy a house from another place. If you are relocating here, or if you're in the city, how are you going to buy that house? I'm talking about if you think you're going to be contingent, good luck. How you're going to buy a house when we have what I'm about to talk about. Median market times is 7 days, which is really shorter than that. It's because the agents or the sellers want to go through the weekend and the open houses. Most of them are getting offers in 2-3 days, but then they just delay it to see how many offers they can get. So that's what I'm about to talk about, the competitive nature of this market. It is bonkers, and it's been bonkers for like a decade. So a lot of the parts of the country I'm hearing from my colleagues and stuff are slowing down. I've been reading nationally, it's starting to turn into a buyer's market. Nuh-uh, not around here. Not in the western suburbs, not in the northern suburbs. Nowhere in the Chicago suburbs is it slow right now, unless the schools are not that great, right? So these communities, Oak Park, median 7 days right now, I think. LaGrange is like 6 or 7 days or something like that, 8 days. I mean, I'm talking about Naperville is 11 days. That means median market time, most properties are selling in fewer than 2 weeks, right? So also look at this property right here. 300,000 over asking cash. It was $1 million house. Buyer paid 30% higher, cash 1.3 million, and that is not out of the ordinary. So what do you need to, so the competitive nature of this market is crazy, even if you live here, and if you don't, how the hell are you gonna buy a house from afar? When you come in here for a weekend and the prices that come on Thursday are gone by Saturday morning. I recently had a YouTube client that a place came on Halloween night at 5 p.m. It's coming in from out of town. Sunday, we're going to see some places. Great, let's get in Sunday. Saturday at 2, they had highest and best 2. Less than 24 hours. They had multiple offers and they had already accepted an offer. How do you manage that? Well, I can help you, but it's challenging. I have people that are trying to buy from afar, and it's just like Zoom calls are not gonna work for me to buy a house. And if that's the case, you need to figure out what you're gonna do. How are you actually gonna buy that, right? So here's the deal. This is what I'm seeing, and this is what I want you to prepare for. I don't sugarcoat things. You are in a seller's market in the Chicago suburbs right now. You basically have to do anything the seller asks you to get a home, right? Part of my job is not getting you the best price. It's basically getting you a house, right? And that is part of it, is knowing the other agents, playing nice with other agents that like to work with me. But here's what you're gonna have to do. You're probably gonna overpay over list price. If that's not what you want, or if you're not prepared for that, good luck, seriously. And if you aren't paying list or over list, it's probably a crappy house, for real. All right, so that's one thing. You have to be prepared. Multiple offers, over list price. To get the homes, almost everybody is going as is, which does not mean you're gonna lose your earnest money, and it does not mean you can back out, which we can talk about later. But most people are going in, most buyers, and saying, I'm not gonna ask you for credits, and I'm not gonna ask you to fix anything in these 100-year-old homes that I just told you have a lot of issues, that you're gonna think that the place is falling apart, right? But it's another thing, as is. So basically telling the sellers you're gonna close whenever they want, because a lot of sellers want a little bit of time these days. And then also something that's becoming more and more common is an appraisal gap waiver. I'll give you an example. That $1 million house that sold for 1.3, well, the seller's saying, hey, my agent and I think it's worth $1 million. You want to pay 1.3? That's great for you, but I'm not going to risk the bank coming back and saying it's not worth 1.3 million. So what I want you to do is to agree that if the bank says it's not worth more than $1 million, you have to cover that difference, whether it's with more cash up front, renegotiate, putting a lower down payment, that kind of a thing. But that is what the norm is around here. Multiple offers, properties going in minutes, hours, right? That kind of a thing. Buyers just waiving practically everything. I'm not gonna ask you to ever waive your inspection. I probably wouldn't even work with you if you did, because I think that is a recipe for disaster, but you're probably not gonna be able to ask for anything. So that is one of the awful things about this market, right? Is that it goes fast, and we have a lot of houses that you're probably not gonna wanna buy. So it's not like that house that you saw that you lost over the weekend might ever come back. Whether it be location, style, layout, you know what I mean? That might never come back. It's not like we have these cookie cutter subdivisions. So that is one of the most challenging things and one of the worst things about moving to the Chicago suburbs. And if you would like to learn more about moving here, if you wanna find out how I recommend you do it from afar, help you sort of walk you through that process, or talk about any of the stuff that I talked about today, the taxes, the crazy Cook County reassessment, reach out, shoot me a text, Give me a call, send me an email, whatever mode of communication works for you. I'd love to chat with you and help you make the Chicago area your home.